Hey YouTube, Blade Brothers here. Doing a quick video here. I was in the market looking for a EDC knife for my 14-year-old daughter. So I decided, she's old enough. I thought it'd be useful for her to get an EDC knife. EDC knife, of course, for everyday carry, as well as so for self-defense purposes, as well as day-to-day, if she needs to open a box, open some packaging or other purposes. So there's several qualities I was looking into for a what I deem as a knife, appropriate EDC knife for her. One of which is, of course, more compact size, so nothing extremely large. Going back to one of the prior examples I had for so one of my favorites, the Sig Ilishwitz flipper. So see, this is something that would be too large in my opinion for her. Okay, so preferably something smaller yet not too compact. And then also the opening mechanism, I was thinking more in the lines of a flipper. That way, for self-defense purposes, it's easier to deploy rather than, because you could argue, why not just get her something like a Swiss Army knife? Well, in a bind, in a self-defense situation, I can't imagine, anyone really being very effective trying to like open a Swiss Army knife, and just the overall blade size and whatnot is not what I would consider great for a self-defense purpose. So went through several, and then of course I experimented with different opening mechanisms. So some of the knives that I did consider included, like, for example, the Spyderco. Originally looked into the Ladybug, and also looked into the Delica, which is a classic. But her dexterity in terms of her thumb to open via the thumb ring wasn't great. It was hard for her to deploy. So ultimately ruled that out. Also experimented having her try out some of the access, like access lock type. So actually I had her try out one of my Hogue micro flip type knife that I use for in my range bag, but she didn't work quite well. So I think overall it came down to flippers. So I had 3 here that I had her try out, and I wanted to kind of introduce each one. These were more or less within similar price range, so basically less than $50, pretty much how I got to it. Overall length is between 6 to 7 inches. Blade length between a range of from the shortest one, which is the Civivi here, is a 2.65, upwards to the Kershaw here, which is about 3 inches. Weight definitely a factor, so I didn't want it to be too. Part of the reason why I didn't want a humongous knife for her is it's hard for her to hold in her hand, but also the overall weight, because she won't be using it in like a pocket situation. She would probably have to draw it out of her purse. So starting from the top, this is the Civivi Odium flipper, model C2010F, which is their sort of G10 with the translucent, sort of almost like it resembles more like a jade finish. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it in this lighting, but it's sort of a translucent, a little bit on the, has a slight greenish tinge to it, so it's supposed to resemble sort of like a jade. It's G10, so it feels great in the hand, but it's not textured very a lot, so it's still very smooth. One advantage is it has this large sort of I guess, what do you call it, nail flip section here, but it's also a flipper, as I mentioned, so fairly easy to deploy as a flipper. Let's see if we can, it's a little it's sticking a little, but it still deploys as a flipper. This one is a drop point style blade with D2 tool steel, so a decent quality steel, stone wash type finish. You can see the Civivi logo here, right there. And so there isn't actually any markings on the blade itself, except for like maybe right here, which is sort of the design logo, I think, here. And then there's some jimping here for when you actually use it with thumb. You can kind of see here in close-up, it's got a finger guard, which is nice, which is consisting of the flipper tab right there, and it's a liner lock, but it's relatively small in terms of handle length, so it actually, I get a decent 3-finger grip to it, but I can't get my 4-finger on it. But my daughter definitely has smaller hands, so it works. And then it comes with a pocket clip, reversible, so you can actually switch it from this side to this side. Overall, it's a fine looking knife, very lightweight. It's only 2.5 ounces. But my daughter didn't really like it, and I'll explain why later, but kind of run through the other one. This one was actually my first choice for her, which is, of course, the, you can see from here, it's the Kershaw Ken Onion design. So it's classic Ken Onion design, the Leek. It's an assisted flipper, so it has a spring activated flipping action here, so you can kind of see how quickly that deployed. You can see here on the blade, it's a patented Ken Onion design, which is a classic. This is the 1660 teal, so it has aluminum teal colored handles here. Also a liner lock, of course. And it has a pocket clip here, which is reversible from one end to the other, but it's only on one side, so you can't fasten the pocket clip on this side. And then it has a little lock here, so if you actually wanted to, you can lock this the blade from opening, because it's assisted, so sometimes if you inadvertently hit this, and it might actually deploy the knife, which is not what you want. So it has this lock in place. You can actually move the lock out of position and then immediately, well, hit the table. But if I zoom out, you see how quickly that deploys. The assisted flipping action is quite good, and I'm a big fan of Ken Onion designs. If you recall, I did one of the another video on the stylus, which is another great assisted flipper type design. This one is the with the 3-inch blade length, so the longest blade length. It has a sort of a Warncliffe style blade, little bit of jimping over here. In here, so you can see here. So a little bit of jimping right here. These little thumb tabs, you can call them, aren't really useful as thumb tabs as much, but I mean, if your fingers are small enough, you can still use it. But they also function as a stop right there, so it actually rests quite close to the actual liner, so it really holds the blade solidly in place. And you can see here I can actually get a full hand grip on this, so quite good there. Yeah, this was actually my first choice, but my daughter actually ruled this one out as well. And then the last one I want to introduce is the this one's the Gerber Highbrow Compact. It's also an assisted flipper. So the spring action is a little bit more strong, I guess. It feels a little bit more tense. And then instead of a liner lock design, it's an access lock design. See? There's also a lock here. Little hole for lanyard. The pocket clip is reversible from one side to the other. It's not a full access lock in the sense that if I, in like some of the, for example, the Benchmade or the Hogues, I can actually release the lock and flip it open. But in this case, it doesn't function that way. It's only the locking mechanism. So you would actually have to deploy as with a flipper and then use the lock to unlock the blade. Not a bad design overall. I like the stonewash finish on it. Some of you already know I'm a big fan of stonewash. I can get a full hand grip on this. The handle is, out of all of these blades, the widest, so you can actually get a much better grip on the blade as a whole. The blade length is 2.8 inches. So it's sort of an in-between between the Civivi and the Kershaw. And it has a very pronounced finger guard here. So definitely you won't risk having your finger slip past the finger guard onto the blade during use. If you zoom in here, you can kind of see it's a great stonewash style finish. It also has a sharpening choil, and it has a good angle for the blade itself. Overall, it's a good knife. And my daughter ultimately decided to use this as her EDC. They all have very good qualities in of its own. But the greatest determining factor why my daughter ultimately went with the Highbrow is the fact that her finger strength, she is unable to actually deploy these other knives for whatever reason. She doesn't have a strong enough finger. You know, her fingers are smaller and more thinner than mine, definitely. And you know, so to actually deploy these others, it doesn't quite work for her. This one's still sticking a little bit, but now it's kind of all right. So it's easier with the assisted, of course, but still, she struggled to even get the deploying of the Canadian Leek. I think in part is because the flipper portion, she's not used to doing a sort of downward angle, because you would have to angle it down this way for it to properly deploy. She's used to pushing down which I've seen some people when they're using flippers, sometimes they struggle because they're pushing down directly. So instead of an angle like this, they're pushing down like this. And in this case, it would be like you'd have to apply a great deal of force before it would deploy. If you're used to kind of doing a sort of a flick down at an angle, then it's pretty straightforward. So this one, yeah, if you can kind of imagine, if you push down at an like downward, it would be very hard to deploy. But if you were to do sort of a angle flip motion like that, then it's relatively easy. This one, you can see how pronounced the flipper tab section is. So even if you're doing sort of a downward action, you saw how I kind of did that. It wasn't a really pronounced. I didn't have to put my finger all the way out to here. Even if you were to do it like from here, just kind of, you can see already, if you were to push downward, it already deploys. The assisted action on this is also helpful. I prefer the Leek in terms of how smooth it went, but this one is still decent. And with that angle problem that she has with, and she's a lefty too, so to be able to deploy it with her left hand, yeah, she had a bit of a issue with these other knives, but the Highbrow actually became the knife of choice, which is quite interesting. I mean, all of these are great knives. The look and feel, I think the Civivi one is quite nice as a compact type knife because, like I said, it's I can't get a full 4-finger grip on this very well. It's sort of, the hilt is the handle is relatively short. You can see there compared to the Kershaw, and you can see there compared to the Gerber, it's relatively short. So I can primarily get a 3-finger grip and just kind of, but it's not a bad knife overall. I mean, for simple things, opening boxes or whatnot, this actually works quite well. My personal preference would be the Leek, just because of, well, more blade length, slender design, relatively light. Because the Gerber here is quite heavy. It's aluminum handles, and you can see how relatively thick it is. So overall, this thing is 4.4 ounces. Compared to like the Leek, which is only 2.5, and the Civivi is also 2.5. But since my daughter is carrying it in a purse, doesn't really matter that much in terms of the weight. I mean, and it won't take up too much space in her purse. So overall, she went with the Highbrow. So I hope you like this video. These are all great knives, honestly. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. I hope this video is helpful if you're, shopping for knives for, possibly a significant female in your life. So daughter, wife, mother, whatnot, girlfriend. So these are great knife selections. So for different reasons, I went with different things. But the ultimate decision my daughter chose was the Highbrow. So, and not a bad knife. So I support that decision. As always, please like and subscribe to our channel. Leave us comments if you have any suggestions or thoughts behind these knives, as well as the other ones I've mentioned, like the Delica or the Hogue microflip and things like that. All right, Blade Brothers signing off. Have a good one.